Hello everyone, welcome to FSChangemakers. And as usual, we have an awesome woman joining us to share her awesome story. While a lot of times we talk to a lot of corporate women who talk about their journeys across startups or big companies, we wanted to do something different this time around, and we have a professional juggler and bartender called Ami Shroff who's joined us. Amy has been doing this professionally since 2003, and she was one of the first two bartenders in India to start doing this professionally. She's been adjudged as the best bartender in India multiple times. 2018 was once that she won it for the Times Food and Lifestyle Awards. And it's an absolute pleasure to have her and talk to her about her journey and get to know her better. Amy, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Adarsh. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, excited for this.
So, Amy, first things first, how did you end up becoming a bartender? It's a slightly obvious career choice.
I was 18 back then, and it just seemed like a fascinating profession to enter into. But I think when I started, it was just like a fun thing to do. It wasn't so much like this is going to be my career, or I didn't plan it too much, and I just sort of entered it. Me and my very good friend Delnaz were like in college, and this was something we were doing alongside with college. And we got to travel with it, got to meet some interesting people, and it all just seemed very fascinating, a very new profession. Flair bartending was very new. Flair had just sort of started in India. There were very few bartenders doing it. So that was what pulled me towards the profession. And I kind of learned on the job, learned from different bartenders. Back then, I think YouTube and these videos, online videos, just sort of had come out back in 2003. And there was so much information that one could learn from the internet. And it was all just, it was it was interesting, so there's so much that I picked up from just watching videos and practicing. And then opportunities kind of came our way, and it became a career option somewhere along the line, once we started.
I think it'll be great if you can share with our audience that what's the difference between a normal bartender and a flair bartender.
Yeah. So flair bartending is just adding flair to bartending. It's just making it more visually exciting, more in control for the bartender. Whatever objects the bartender is playing with, is utilizing behind the bar, she or he can add some more finesse to that object, like manipulate the object in ways that you wouldn't think otherwise. Instead of just taking a bottle and pouring, it's simple. It's just about picking it up stylishly, maybe doing a little twirl and then going for a pour, making your pour as well precise to the ml that you want it, without spilling anything outside. Just that kind of precision is also flair. It's just when something is done with such ease and it looks really good, it seems like the person's been doing it so many times that they've gotten so good at it. That is flair. So I think the person, when the naan or the pizza chef spins the pizza around or the naan bread around, that looks like flair. When even the coffee or the tea, when you see a long pour that they do, that is flair. It's just doing something so often that you become so good at it. It just happens so smoothly and it looks beautiful to watch. And that is flair.
And at what time did you realize that flair bartending could be a career in itself?
I think shortly in the beginning itself of when I started practicing flair bartending. But I think in the beginning, I wasn't sure if this is going to be my career option or if this is something I'm going to do for many years to come. So initially it was something fun. It was something exciting and I wanted to get better at and I wanted to learn about. But I mean, when I was 17, 18, I wasn't so career oriented, or I wasn't planning what my career is going to be. Okay, my 10-year plan. And I didn't have it so structured, but it kind of just, it kept continuing and I didn't sort of stop, so flair bartending started when I was 18 and I was in college. And the first few years we were kind of learning, getting an idea of how things work, how events work, how to talk to clients, how to follow up for your money, and how the life of a freelancer in those aspects as well, how there's work involved to get work as well. These little things I kind of just learned on the job. It was a great learning experience as well. Then competing in competitions, so the competition will have a certain criteria. You will be preparing in a certain structure, like maybe there's a certain topic that you have to prepare a cocktail around, or if there is a Flair routine, a Flair competition, and it's a 5-minute time duration, you have to perform a Flair routine in. So all these things would motivate me to practice in a specific direction, learn a little more, improve my skill sets. And that also got a lot of opportunities, these kind of platforms where there were competitions. There are lots of people from the industry come. You meet other people, get ideas as well. Some people give you job offers over there. Some things are interesting, you take them up. So it kind of just keeps continuing from there. But there wasn't a particular point I said, okay, this is going to become my career. It just sort of happened that way. Yeah.
And what was the reaction of your parents and those around you when you decided to take this route?
So initially they were concerned. My dad especially was always concerned, especially because I would go out at night. I would be roaming around. Sometimes I would be doing these things which he would be constantly worried about me. I did not understand the safety concerns that my father had when I was young, especially. And I didn't realize like the world is actually so unsafe in so many ways. But I feel like that's what made me more confident as well. Stepping out at night, being out in spaces where it's mostly men, understanding these small subtleties of like how the vibe is, how safe you feel, how safe you don't feel, all these little things. It helped me grow as a person, made me stronger, made me more confident as well. And I think being behind the bar also added so much to my growth or my learning and my development in a certain way. It gave me this confidence of, just being behind the bar, being in control. So even though the world might be still very sexist, very messed up, not such a safe place for women and many genders who are not men, I still think like it's these little things that kind of make us more prepared and more confident to step out there. And the more we step out, like the safer it gets, So initially, my parents did have a concern about all these aspects. But as they saw that I'm doing this, my dad was a little more confident that, okay, it's safe because so far she's been fine. And as long as I think he knows where I'm working and who I'm working with for all those details, like he was a little more at ease. And and I think it was helpful as well. Initially, my dad would get sometimes involved as well, asking the clients or asking a few details like, okay, what about the drawback? What time is it going to get over? Certain questions which I might have overlooked otherwise, So it's good to have these aspects, especially in the beginning when you're entering a profession, like to have that, being taken care of, especially for women in a male-dominated space or in hospitality or working late in the nights. Ask these questions, ask for things to be arranged or organized for yourself so that it's safe, so that it's comfortable. And this is a protocol that places and venues need to take so that the staff feels good, and comfortable. And this is just how it should be. Yeah.
So 2003 was still pretty early days in terms of Flair bartending in India, right? So you mentioned that YouTube videos, etc., played a big role. In fact, I think at that time YouTube also wasn't there, right? So online videos played some role in the way you learned. But were there any mentors or people that you were able to take guidance from?
So there were two bartenders the first two bartenders I met, there was Ankit Nigandhi and Sean D'Souza. Our first set of events was in Goa, where we learned a lot. So 1 month we were working there, assisting them, sort of learning on the job, asking questions. That's how it started. But right now there are so many bartending schools. Even back then there were a few, but I think it's easier for a person to approach it by getting a little training before they enter the profession. You feel a little more confident, which I think I missed out on. Which is fine. I kind of learned on the job. I learned it from books. I learned through asking questions and videos, various different spaces. But if you do a course, it's a 1 month, 3 month training that one goes through, and they get a good rounded understanding of cocktails, of alcohol, of basics, of bartending, the different tools we use, all the different aspects we need to know. And then when you enter the field, you don't feel so lost in there. So I think that's a better approach for one to take, but it's most of your learning will happen on the job. And that's where I learned so much. These two bartenders were the first bartenders I met, and I learned so much of Flair from them. But then I was working with Marriott for a while in Bombay and in Enigma, and there were some amazing Flair bartenders there as well. And there were 2 Flair bartenders where I again learned a lot from, Ryan and Damien. So it's there were these few people in the beginning of my career, especially who I took so much information from. I tried and learned as much as I could. And yeah, that was like the molding of my starting of my career. And yeah, then things just kind of flowed. Then even people I met like briefly for one day, there's something you learn always, a little something that you learn from here and there. Even people who are not bartenders, sometimes just artists, musicians, and event people, how they work, how they function, just getting bits of inspiration here and there. It's there's something to learn from so many spaces, even if it's not your profession. Yeah.
And in general, non-male representation is a big issue across professions, especially in India. And I'm assuming that in your profession, it's even more, right? Because of all the challenges that you mentioned. Have you seen any markable changes happen from 2003 to now, or it's largely the same?
Yeah, it has in an aspect, you have so many more women than back in 2003 in the industry today. But then the industry has also grown a lot since 2003. So you have a lot more men as well in the industry. So if you see the ratio of men is to women is the same. I presume it's hardly changed, if at all, like maybe a % up and down. But while the industry is at the same time growing and the ratio is the same, but you at least have this presence of a good number of women who are in the industry. They might be bartenders, they might be alcohol experts or like wine experts, and they might be working for liquor brands. Yeah, they might be specializing in different fields per se, which is connected to the bar or the alcohol industry in some way or the other. And even in hospitality, you have so many women who are entering the kitchen and the food space as well, which is so ironic, right? Because that's been one of the most common professions of India, especially for women, being like the housemaker, which involves responsibilities of a chef, right? And so many more responsibilities, which is why I think that's the main reason you don't see many professions in India, especially, which have a good number of women is to men. It's not just hospitality, but it's all professions, because we still have the most popular profession in our country is the housemaker, which is an unpaid profession. So as long as that remains to be an unpaid profession, you're not going to have people opting out of it or like, taking up these other spaces. It's just it's a responsibility thrown on this one gender once like marriage and all these concepts come into place. And it's what is the major cause, I think, of this disparity in gender equality, in having more men than women in most industries, safety concerns or whatever you call them. If a place has more women, it automatically becomes safe. The fact that it's unsafe is because there's a lack of women. That's the only thing that makes a space unsafe. Like if you go out at night on the streets and if you see a crowd of women in comparison to like a crowd of men, you would not feel so insecure about that space or unsafe. Even for men, they will feel safer when they go to a crowd of women rather than a crowded space with men. So it's just, I think that's what makes it safe. And that's when we'll start seeing a difference in the ratios of genders in all these professions, not just hospitality. But yeah, it's very strange when I see kitchens still being male dominated, and I'm like, what? How is this happening? Like, otherwise, when it comes to your home responsibilities, there's so few men who enter the kitchen space and take up that responsibility, and that is still so warped, or it's something commendable, like, oh, the guy cooks also in the house. Like, wow, what a lucky woman! Like, what a lucky, like, I don't know, it's so weird. So, yeah.
Interesting thing that you brought out there, right? That if there are more women, people will automatically feel safe. Similarly,
Yeah.
when you are doing your work, does the representation or the way the crowd is, more men, more women, or whatever be the construct of the crowd, does that impact your, ability to do a better job in any way?
I think it impacts my mood. It impacts the vibe, the way I feel, how comfortable I feel also to a certain extent. It's it's not about just about men and women. It's about having a crowd which is, I don't know, which is not very sexist, which has not been brought up in a patriarchal mindset space, which is, it's not such a big deal to see a woman behind the bar. Like, it's not such a big deal for a woman to drink alcohol. In these kind of spaces, it's like having a crowd like that to tend to is so much easier. It's so much, like I can relate to them, right? I can have conversations also. Although most often in the bar, you can't have long conversations because it's loud or you're busy. But it's the vibe. It's that short 3-4 word conversation also it's nice. The vibe, politeness is another important factor I give emphasis on. If the guest is polite with me, respectful, it's I'm in a good mood, I'm in a good space, I feel like serving them with all my heart and love, and like I'm into my work as well, I'm into what I'm making, I want them to have a good drinking experience, not wait too long at the bar, all those factors. But if you sometimes have guests who are arrogant or who are not very respectful or polite, and I don't, the vibe that comes out from my side is not so nice as well. And I don't like working in that mood or that atmosphere as well. So all these little things actually impact us in some way. And it's just about having an open-minded, inclusive crowd. And it's great to work for them. Of course, if it's half women, half men, that also changes the vibe. It's the mood, everything makes a difference. The men behave differently also when there are women around, all these little factors. Then there have been some events that I've gone for, and it's been so weird because sometimes there are these conferences where you see a segregation of men and women, like this completely two different groups. And they're couples, like they're husbands and wives and people who know one another, and they've come together, but they end up segregating into their like respective spaces based on gender. And most often the women are not coming to the bar to drink, and it's mostly the men that I'm serving. And these one odd events, it's not like something bad has happened to me. It's just I'm judging everything and I'm analyzing and I'm getting this vibe of like how unequal this whole equation is, and it's so obvious in your face. So it's strange. Or like how the kids, if there are children, it will mostly, the children will be taken care of by the mothers rather than the fathers, while the fathers are drinking. It's this whole very weird atmosphere, I feel, when I see that happening. Yeah.
So you identify yourself as queer, and that
Yes.
could mean different things to different people. So would we love to understand your interpretation of what do you mean when you say that you're queer?
Right. So I mean, I feel like it's there's a little, I mean, it's a spectrum of whom we are attracted to, what gender we identify with. I do think I identify as a woman, and some moments I do feel like it's somewhat non-binary also, but because gender is also such a construct, like it's something I've been brought up with. Have I questioned it enough? I wonder now. So it's something I need to understand for myself and on my path. But when it comes to like my sexual preference, I think I'm somewhere in between the spectrum of lesbian and bisexual. I would say more lesbian and very little bisexual. And if that makes sense at all, like attraction is something complicated to explain, but yeah, it's the way I felt for certain women, I've not felt like that for men. And although there can be a slight level of attraction, it's not strong enough. So I would say there's a hint of bisexuality that I have in me, but I'm mostly lesbian, if that's how I would like to define it. Again, these things are a little fluid and it kind of flows. So for some, it might not even be fluid. It depends. Yeah, for me, it's a little like somewhere in between, a little here, a little there. Yeah, that's how I identify.
Has that impacted your choice of profession also in some way?
Oh, yeah, might have. I might have never connected it in a way, but I wanted something which would have given me freedom, where I have control over this little space of mine. Maybe in a corporate setup, or the impression was when I was a child, I think also like that the corporate setup has these rigid rules and it's very like school-like, like multiple things. You have to be dressed a certain way. You have to do things a certain way, meet deadlines, blah, blah, blah. You can't really do it in your own way as like an artist could. And I think so art was something which really fascinated me. And even sports. So as a child, I think the professions I could see myself entering, or the spaces I could see myself entering, were either taking up sports at professional level, which I don't see much of a career option for women in India. Even in cricket, like one of the most popular sports of India, when it comes to women's cricket, it's not really much of a career option. And when it comes to any other sports, it's, yeah, now I think some women, I mean, some sports people have made a name for themselves in these individual sports. But when you see team sports, we still lag so far behind, especially for women's sports. So yeah, sports was not a major career option, although I did enjoy it a lot, and I did love sports. I do still. And art was another space I thought I could fit into. So I just wanted a space where I could have less rules and do things more my way, because I knew I would be able to do it better. And I would be successful at my work. I would be good at my work. So probably bartending kind of just, I picked it up because Flair, again, it seemed like such an activity, right? It's almost like a sport, but you're playing with yourself. You're not like competing with others, but you're kind of using these acrobatic skills to 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 reach a certain goal of sorts. And it's an art form combined as well, because you're making these beautiful visual presentations, and it's an art, just the way you put it together, the way you go with the music, the way your personality comes out, like in a dance. You're kind of dancing with these objects you find behind the bar. So all this really attracted me, and I didn't question it too much. But probably there's something about, like, the being queer has an impact on my personality, or yeah. And I think that's what also impacts the choices we make in our lives. The books we read, the movies we watch, the music we listen to, all these little things, like choices we make, the activities we take up for fun as a hobby, all of these add to our, I think, the way we do our profession, the way we select our profession, the way we change our profession also. I've been doing this for about 17 years now, and I sometimes feel like I want to bartend differently from how I always have so far now. And especially this pandemic, I've been thinking like it's a time to like try doing something differently, and be a little more conscious in my bartending is what I want to approach with. Yeah.
So talking about, one more aspect of bartending. So being a juggler or a bartender or a flair bartender, right? There's immense amounts of concentration which is required, right? Because you lapse in your concentration and the bottle is gone. So
Right.
how do you practice, mental, or just the physical exercises of the practicing it, etc.?
So ideally, discipline is, I've realized discipline helps so much a person when it comes to practicing, and to do a practice regularly is very impactful. I've had phases where I'm not practicing regularly, and I would do it as and when I would feel like, but I would realize if you give yourself a specific time and you're like, okay, I'm going to give myself at least 45 minutes of practice every day, this time to this time. Maybe you can extend it, even make it go on for 1 hour, 2 hours, however long you want to practice. But this regular routine is very helpful to see growth happening on a very fast level, and improvement. I've had this especially during competitions. Before a competition, I would get super motivated, like the entire month or so. I would be practicing hours in the day also, and just taking short breaks and practicing, going back into it, because my mind was obsessed with it. Like it's something I'm really, it comes very naturally. It's not too much of discipline that's required. But I've realized, like, that's what, you don't always need to be motivated to, do these things that we think we want in our lives and we want to improve in. You just gotta create this routine of sorts of like a disciplined flow. And that's what really helps. Stop like trying to wait for motivation. Sometimes it's great to feel that motivation and that, that push, and then you just flow so naturally. But just to sometimes give yourself a little push and start, and then it kind of, once you start, I think after 5 minutes, get into the flow, but it takes a few minutes to kind of get into that flow of practice. And it's very important in flair bartending, especially in any kind of skilled profession. I think it's all about practice. So maybe when I'm even behind the bar and I'm multiple days back to back behind the bar, and you're making, say, the same number of cocktails or the same type of cocktails again and again, you will realize how your perfection, or how your cocktail is improving, or it's getting more and more perfect, more and more precise, maybe faster. maybe with less thought, you're just taking tuck, 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 what needs to be done. You don't have to look for it. You don't have to reach out for anything, it's all there. So I think efficiency improves as you keep practicing and as we repeat something again and again. And in flair bartending, in mixology, it's very important to have that as much as possible. Sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. And I realize I also get bummed out when I'm not doing it, when I'm like, why am I not just doing it? Just forget waiting for motivation, just jump into it, just start off. So yeah, sometimes I need to beat myself up, or in the sense I feel really bad, why am I doing this? Why am I lazing around so much? Let's just get on it and stop procrastinating and get to it, so then I start off maybe.
Have you ever done any major goof ups at any of the events?
Yeah, might have. So once I was aiming shot and it kind of spilled a little, but it's not fully my goof up. I guess the person moves and these things are a little dangerous, but I would usually keep a wet napkin in the other hand always ready, and you just sort of wipe it off. And it's only the alcohol that burns, so the skin nothing happens really. So if you take the right precautions, nothing bad is going to happen. So that was just something, these little errors, 1-2 moments have happened. Once I remember in the beginning time, I was flaring and I was practicing behind the bar. And usually you don't practice moves you're not confident with behind the bar. You just do the moves you're really confident with. But still, something can always go wrong, even with a move that you've got bang on. But one day, it slips out of your hand. So once a bottle slipped out and it crashed on top of this entire pile of glasses. And around that time, the music slowed down, so everyone heard it. It was very all the attention on me. So it was funny, but I think after 5-10 minutes, it's okay. And yeah, except there's some loss to the bar, but yeah, these small mistakes sometimes happen. It's fine. Yeah.
So thanks, Amy. So we've kind of come to the end of this discussion.
Yeah.
But before we finish, there is a small rapid fire round that we do with all our guests, and we would like to jump onto that before we finish off this interview.
Super. Let's go for it.
Cool. So the first question is: any pivotal moments from your life which define you as the person that you are?
I think so. Karate was a major life-changing experience of mine as a child. I'd gone through it, and it was one of the first sports or first activities, physical activities, I think I'd encountered. And I think it trained me so much in terms of slight discipline, endurance, up, and pushing forward. Pain is good, that's what it taught me in a certain way. And also it was the first time I manipulated objects. So in karate, we learned how to manipulate the stick, the big stick, twirling it around and stuff. And there's a nunchaku, which is 2 sticks with a chain in the middle. And just learning these 2 objects, the nunchucks and the stick, was my introduction, I think, towards object manipulation, the juggling arts, flair bartending. All of these are connected. And I think karate is what started it when I was 9 or 10 years old. Yeah.
Awesome. So the next one is one thing about your profession that you truly love.
I think having my own little circle of space, behind the bar, or when I'm on stage and I'm performing, having that little space of my own and me being in control of that, in charge of that, and hopefully creating something in that space which people will appreciate and there's a reason for me to be in this space. I serve a purpose. I like that feeling. Yeah.
One cocktail which according to you is massively underrated in the world.
Ooh, underrated. Wow. So Negronis have gotten very popular. I would have otherwise said the Negroni is one delicious cocktail, but now it's quite popular. So I wouldn't say it's underrated. I think the Pina Colada is quite underrated because it's this very tropical beach drink, and you won't see many nightclubs and people drinking a Pina Colada. It's a very a fruity drink to drink kind of thing. It doesn't feel like alcohol even. But it's such a nice, delicious drink. And if you make it with fresh pineapple juice and fresh coconut milk, it's amazing. It's wow. So yeah, the Pina Colada, when it's made with fresh ingredients, is something else. It's amazing. And good rum also. Wow. Yeah.
Amazing. So 5 wardrobe staples that you can't live without.
Wardrobe staples.
Yeah.
There was a time I used to always wear a hairband, but my hair was longer, so my hair would come on my face, and I don't like anything on my face, so I would wear a hairband often, but now I don't. And otherwise, in my wardrobe is really simple. I don't have any jewelry accessories as such anymore. I used to before, but while contact juggling, I don't wear any accessories on my hands. I have nothing here. Maybe something around the neck sometimes. Yeah, my wardrobe's pretty much just casual, just t-shirts, pants, a bunch of like a few jackets. I don't have a staple as such. Maybe certain bags, like I would have this waist pouch I would always carry around, or a small bag, like something like a size like this, so just a small bag that I can put my wallet, keys, phone, and that's it. Like, yeah, so maybe that's my staple. My wardrobe is very basic. It's not very interesting. Yeah. Although another wardrobe is filled with juggling equipment and bar equipment, that's way more interesting. Yeah.
3 Indian women that you really look up to.
Oh, wow. So as a child, I think I always was very fascinated with Mother Teresa, of course. Like, I mean, I just thought she was a very wow kind of a woman, and like so much compassion. It's very, it's fascinating to see so much compassion in humans. Then Jhansi Ki Rani, I remember reading about her, Rani Lakshmibai, when I was a child in school, and I found her like a badass woman, like amazing stories and there's such few women heroes that we've learned about in our history, except for these two main characters, actually. Then there was somebody else I recently learned about, thanks to mixology, because of this competition that I was entering. And the competition, you have to create it around an iconic story or an iconic human or an iconic something, legends of some kind. And it was around the first practicing woman doctor, or amongst the first practicing women doctors, but there were 1, 2, but I think she was the first one to like properly hardcore go at it and practice medicine in India back in the 1890s or 1880s or something. And yeah, back then, even educating women was like not heard of, and even going through like basic homeschooling or anything, like it's not cool. Like, women were married off at an age of 12 or before that. So it was, she fought child marriage herself. She fought out of it. She fought in court to get out of her child marriage when the courts like made her say that, no, you have to live with your husband. She said, no, I will not. I'll rather pay the fine, or I'd rather go to jail. Like she was a badass herself, and she completed a medical, she studied abroad also, and then she came back in India, and she was practicing till she retired, till like 70 something. And her name was Rani Lakshmibai, and she seemed amazing, so I think she was from somewhere in Maharashtra. And yeah, so these are 3 iconic women I know of, but I'm sure there are so many more others, but we just sadly don't read about it so much in our history books. Rani Lakshmibai also I got to know through, there's a movie and all made on her, but thanks to like this cocktail, I got to research so much about her. And yeah, I didn't know about her before that.
Thanks for sharing that. Neither did I. So lastly, any message that you would like to give to our audience today?
Yeah, I don't know. There's no one specific message. I think it's just about like, yeah, what message calls out. Like there's so many of these messages which we know, which are amazing, motivating, which make us charge us to do the things we feel like. And yeah, just go for it. I think, at the end of it, whatever you feel like doing, and if it seems weird, it seems absurd, it seems impossible even, like sometimes the journey is the special thing of it, and it's not necessarily getting to a space, but yeah, the journey itself is exciting. And yeah, I don't know, the advice I think is yeah, go to professionals for advice, not to me. Yeah, like that's the advice. There are some good professionals out there to give you some good advice. Yeah, like yeah.
Thanks, Amy. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for joining us.
Same here, and thank you so much for having me.